Everybody. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the TagoIO 2026 webinar series. It's great to have you today. Today, we're going to be talking about Scale Smarter with TagoDeploy. Before I get into that, just a couple quick introductions. I'm David Hall, Customer Success Manager here at TagoIO, and I also have Philip Cochran, which is a lead developer here. As people are starting to join in, I see more people joining. I'm going to launch a quick poll. Just what industry or vertical is your project targeting? So I'll go ahead and launch that and just leave that up for a minute while we are waiting for people to join. But we have a great webinar series so far this year. We have some more coming up, so make sure you keep an eye on the events page. Um, Lots of good webinars coming up for that. So it looks like smart building. I have a lot of customers in that vertical as well. Agriculture, industrial, we have people. So I have customers in all these verticals actually. So that's really great, to see the different verticals that people are in, whether you're using Tago or not. But from a Tago standpoint, right, Tago is so customizable and so versatile. It doesn't surprise me at all. Agriculture, industrial, smart buildings, smart cities, asset tracking, you name it. The Tago IO is used in all kinds of different verticals. And as the customer success manager, I really get to talk to some people that have some very interesting applications that they use. You'd be surprised. So that makes Toggle fun from a CSM perspective, speaking with customers all day and prospects, right? So what we're going to talk about today, obviously, is TagoDeploy. I'm going to share this poll real quick. I'm going to have one more poll too, but I'll launch that in a little while. Share the results here real quick. Okay, so let me move this over here. All right, so if we think about, oops, sorry, TagoDeploy overview, right? What is TagoDeploy? TagoDeploy is a dedicated single tenant version of the TagoIO platform that gives customers their own isolated IoT infrastructure running on a dedicated AWS instance, deployed in a region of your choice, by the way. So on the shared tenant, right? You can choose the EU or the US. Well, you get much more granular as where your data lives on TagoDeploy. And then let's talk about why does it matter? Well, really, as IoT solutions grow, organizations often need greater control over performance, security, compliance, data residency, and operating cost. And TagoDeploy provides that, right? With really what it is TagoDeploy provides that control without requiring to build and manage their own IoT infrastructure. It's interesting. I've been here 6 years and I've worked with thousands of customers. And quite often I'll speak to somebody to where they have their own infrastructure, but the cost in maintaining that, the cost in building their application in-house is enormous. And they just save so much time and money on Tago, specifically with TagoDeploy, right? So how does it work? As I've mentioned, TagoDeploy runs on the full TagoIO platform on a dedicated AWS resources, allowing customers to choose deployment regions, as I mentioned, customize resources, set your own limits, and scale infrastructure, as your solution grows. A key part that you should pull out of that is set their own limits, right? Yes, on Tago, you can, if you're familiar with Tago, you can, set your own data input, your data output, but really there's other limits like there's hard limits, RPMs, tag limits. You don't have those limitations on TagoDeploy. It gives you much more freedom. And as well on the shared instance, which is great, we have thousands of people on it. You're on a tiered pricing, right? So like data input, if you're at the minimum at 1 million, it's a 15th of the month, and you realize, you know what, I need to go to the next tier, which will bump you up to 3 million, very cheap. I think it's like $20 here in the US for 2 million data inputs for that month. Well, on TagoDeploy, you can be much more granular with your spend. You could say, I only want 700,000. And it's not, TagoDeploy is not prepay, it is postpay. So you pay for what you use on the AWS services. Coachran's going to go over a live demo here in a little bit, not yet, but he's going to go over some of that, I think, towards the end of his demos, where you can just see really where your spend is going, right? And really what makes it different, right? Unlike traditional IoT platforms that rely on shared infrastructure, TagoDeploy provides complete resource isolation, right? Custom domains, white label capabilities, flexible scaling, and full control over platform configuration. You know, all while you're retaining the features of the TagoIO platform itself. So again, when you think of TagoDeploy, you have TagoDeploy, which is your AWS infrastructure that gives you that granular control over your scaling, right? And then you have the TagoIO platform that sits on your dedicated instance, it's deployed on your dedicated instance. So all the features that you have, if you're used to the shared instance today, right? All those features, you still have that. You're not losing anything at all, right? What you're gaining is full control over the AWS infrastructure and your spend, right? So that's really a great part of TagoDeploy. Now, before I go to a live demo, actually, I'm very interested in this one. Oh, I got to stop this one. Sorry, 1 second. I didn't realize I was still sharing the other poll. So this one here is interesting to me. Are you interested in a dedicated infrastructure, right? Would having a dedicated, isolated IoT platform instance provide value for your organization, right? I see some not sure, which is fine, right? What I would suggest at the end, I'll show you how to request a demo if you're interested to learn more, not just about TagoDeploy, but about anything really, right, that has to do with Tago. I see some yes immediately. Schedule a call with me. Again, david.hall@tago.io, but I'll show you how you can request a demo. Please request a demo through the website. That's the way to go there. And I see some possible in the futures. And only, this is an interesting one too, only for specific customers and projects. The reason why that's interesting is I have a few customers, not very many. I have a few customers that do have the shared instance, right, that they're using for their customers, but they also use TagoDeploy for, I mean, I can't speak about it per NDA, but they need that dedicated instance for specific reasons. Some are legality reasons, some are preference, but I do have that where I see customers using both, right, for different use cases. So that's very interesting. So I'll go ahead and end this, share the results real quick, just so everybody can see. Lots of interaction. By the way, my apologies, I forgot to mention. If you guys have any questions at all, please put them in chat. We'll try to get to those in real time, but if not, we'll have a little bit of time at the end to go over any questions you have. But feel free to ask any questions. And with that, I am going to stop sharing and pass it over to Coachran. Coachran, it's all you for now. As I said, Coachran's going to give you a live demo, and then you'll come back to me and we'll talk about a few things and wrap up the webinar. Thank you, Coachran.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here in just a second. So we're going to go over the live demo. So just picking up where David left off, right? TagoDeploy is pretty much you owning the infrastructure that's behind Tago, right? Imagine as if Tago was an apartment building, right? And on the shared cloud that we have, that you're all usually there, right? That you're used to, you're renting an apartment there, right? And that sometimes has some issues with it, right? Because you might have a next door neighbor or an upstairs neighbor that has a leak, right? And that may affect your application. On TagoDeploy, you don't have that issue, right? Everything is there, everything is your own. So everything is only working for you. The building, the land it builds on, everything is yours. So this is the TagoIO that you're pretty much used to, right? The only difference that you're seeing here on TagoDeploy is the URL that you have here, right? Everything else is pretty much the same. From this point, right, you don't need to retrain your staff, right, or you yourself if you're building your own application. Your devices, your dashboards, everything works pretty much the same. So from that point, we'll start going through what you have that's different, right? And this part is where we start working on it, right? The only thing that you can do, one thing that you have differently here, right? Now that you have a different URL, you're able to white label it as well, right? You don't need to use the TagoIO URL neither for your Tago run, but you can also white label the admin portal, the API. Everything else is your own. Middlewares, MQTT brokers, everything you can set up the way that you want to. Now let's go to where we start on TagoDeploy. It's the apps page. So here we have the catalog of apps that we have here, and you can see we have many different ones, and these are pretty much the things that you we already have on Tago, right? All the network service that we have implemented there, middlewares, MQTT brokers also here. It's one of those. We have a monitoring system here as well. So from this point, you can opt on two different behaviors, right? You can have, for example, for your MQTT broker, you can set up a standalone project where you only have your MQTT broker. So you could use this broker for other reasons, right? You don't have to actually use Tago to use this broker. But let's start with the main platform, right? So here, like David said, it's built on top of AWS, but you have the freedom to select the region that you're on, right? On Tago, we have two main regions, the US region in North Virginia and the EU region in Ireland. But here you have many different, and you can choose your own, right? You can set up all around the globe, whatever it's best suited for you. There are differences in costs between them, but they are not that huge, right? So when you start doing this decision, right, it will move forward. When you select and create your project, we'll go to the next steps, right? Once your project is created, you should be on this screen, right? This screen is your overview of your project. You have your actual cost this month, your previous costs from last month, your main URLs, right? So the API, the admin, the SSC, your deployments, how your application, how your server is behaving, right? CPU utilization, the database, and so on. Everything is laid out here, right? Of course, you have more data on all these interfaces, but this is the main thing you'll probably be looking, right? This is the first page that you're accessing. This is the backbone of the application. So from here, you would be able to check how the health of your application is. You can select specific dates. You can select everything here and understand. Maybe you have a scheduled process that's running and it affects your application, right? It spikes your application. You can see these behaviors here pretty clearly. Now, you can also see on the deployments here what was changed, right? Maybe you increased your instances on your API. That's all visible on here. So you have full control on how you're managing your project. Now let's talk a little bit about the API, right? Sorry, let's talk about the main database. So one thing that we have here that's not automatic on TagoIO is the backup, right? So your application backs up every day on a daily basis at the time that you schedule here, and you can also set up backup retention, right? So you're pretty much set as far as your application goes for for problems, right? So you have a we have a disaster recovery system here in place where you can go to this backup page and pretty much restore your application in a new project from a point where it wasn't broken before. So here you can understand that we have both vertical and horizontal scaling here. We can increase the instance sizes and also add additional reader instances for your database. The same thing applies for the API. So you can increase vertically. You can have a set minimum number of instances running uh, for reliability, maximum number of instances, scaling behaviors, all of that is included. And you can see that each one is an individual interface. So each of them has a specific behavior and they are not tied specifically to each other. Maybe your application uses a lot more API than it uses the database. So you can have a more robust API than you need for the database. So let's go to the next topic, which is the limits page. So, like David said, there is a bunch of limits here, right? And there is the resource quotas that you're all pretty used to on the normal servers, right? The shared cloud. So these are also something that you can increase, but you have freedom to increase a lot of things, right? Many more that you didn't have before. One of those is the mutable data. So I think it's here. So the mutable data limit is one that many customers run into, right? Mutable devices on the shared environment have a limit of 50,000 entries, variables. Here you have the freedom to increase that. So you could have editing processes that work on hundreds of datas, 100,000 of data points. So another one for the people that actually develop analysis on their application is this one. This is also the limit for SDK interactions where you're limited to fetching 10,000 devices or 10,000 variables. This applies also to the dashboards. So you can have a device list where you're listing more than 10,000 devices, which is the actual hard limit on the shared environment. And this applies to many other different limits. Like David said, tags for devices, for entities, which is also a limit that some people run into, and the actual services that you saw before, right? So you can just increase one of those at your will, right? You can those limits are here pretty much for your safety and not for actual limitations, right? So you set these limits so you can maybe something runs out of order and you don't receive a heavy bill without having noticed it, right? But as David said, all of these are postpaid; they're not prepaid anymore, right? You're actually spending only on what you actually used on the platform. So, like I said before in the beginning, there was one app that I mentioned that we just implemented, which is this monitoring app. This monitoring app is used for to monitor this management portal, right? Instead of setting up alerts inside of the platform, we can set up alerts related to how your CPU is behaving, how your API is behaving, the main database, and actually your billing. So you have a way to set up alerts here, and you can set multiple thresholds uh, based on your billing, for example, right? So let's say I only want to spend on my platform $1,000, right? So I can set up thresholds to be alerted on when my platform reaches 50% of that value, and another one with a different type of alert, a critical alert, at 70%. So you have the freedom to set up multiple alerts based on each interaction here. And you have multiple types of actions here, right? You can uh, send an email, send an SMS, run an analysis, send a webhook, right? There is also a webhook type of action here. So there's multiple types of actions that you can implement, and they all have key values here that you can use to understand what went wrong or what's going over what you expected. And then we go to the billing page, which is sometimes things that are the most interesting. Here you have a full view of how your project is and how it was, right? You can see the prior months here and understand how your application and how your project is growing, right? Every day, maybe you can see an increase day by day on when you're adding new devices and how your analysis is behaving based on the new amount of devices. So this tells you in a pretty good way what is being expended on each interaction, right? What goes into the infrastructure, what is the platform license, what goes in the API. Maybe you can uh, optimize things based on these costs, right? Uh, so from that point, you'll see pretty much as you would on AWS. This is all the services that are come from there, and they are added here, so you can understand how you're spending your resources, how your money is being spent on having the MQTT broker and having everything else that you have on your application. This tells you everything that you need to know from the day you start until the end of the month. So that's pretty much most of the things that I think needed to be covered here on TagoDeploy. Uh, so do you guys have any questions?
I'm not seeing any right now, Coachman, but thank you for that. Actually, let me see here. Let me check real quick. There is one question. For organizations already using multiple Tago profiles to separate customers or environments, what are the practical indicators that it's time to move to TagoDeploy instead? Could you share a real-world example where TagoDeploy solved a problem um, that profiles alone could not? I can chime in on that. I would say the majority of customers that migrate from the shared instance, and some just go straight to TagoDeploy, but for customers that migrate to the shared instance, they're not really trying to solve a problem per se, unless they have a specific requirement from a customer or something like that. But why are they going there, right? Because they have 10,000 devices or 15,000 devices, or they need that isolation that I said. But as far as profiles on the TagoIO platform, the dedicated one, they're no different than the ones on the shared instance. I don't think I'm really answering your question because I don't have a real world example where somebody had a problem with the profile and said, I need to go to TagoDeploy to solve this. But if you think about it practically, right, it gives them much more freedom as we've been talking about on the limits and what you can do on TagoDeploy, right, from a limitation, right, from the limit standpoint. So from that, yes, it gives you much more freedom. That's the point of TagoDeploy, quite honestly, is it gives you much more freedom. And if you think about it as a cost per device, right? I mean, you'd have to meet with me one on one. And I know you're a customer of mine, so thank you for joining, by the way. Um, you'd have to meet me one on one to where we could really deep dive your specific scenario, right? And see if it's solving maybe an existing problem you have or something you're foreseeing. So just reach out to me, Alexandra, and you have my email address, and we can have a call for sure, right?
Can I chime in a little bit, David?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the main thing, right, is scalability, right? Sometimes if you have different profiles and different customers where they behave differently, you have different dashboards, that's fine, right? That's kind of understandable that you're doing things on different profiles. Uh, but let's say your application works pretty much the same way for everyone, right? The best option for you to scale is having set up everything in this with blueprint dashboards and all the tools that we provide on Tago, so you don't have that much main.
Oh, I think you froze there a little bit, coaching. But Alexander, I think you get the
Work
idea
that
there.
much for it, right? Without giving you that much of a hassle.
Hmm.
Focus on building the application just because you have a new customer that you need to deploy. So that's kind of the idea for TagoDeploy. Also, there's also the things that David mentioned, right? Sometimes you got a huge deal with a customer and he needs to be on a specific server. He needs to be in EU on somewhere else instead of Ireland, right? He needs a pretty specific behavior that you could provide with TagoDeploy, but you couldn't with normally. But there's also the idea of your company is getting big and it makes sense, right? The billing system postpaid usually has some gives you a better deal than the tiering system uh, from Tago, right? Because you're paying exactly what you're spending instead of paying maybe you need to go to the next tier and the next tier gives you 10 million more data points, right? Or 30 million data records, but you only need an extra million, right? You're paying for the full 30 instead of the actual one that you're spending. So there is some pros and cons there, right? You have a higher starting price from TagoDeploy, but if you're big enough, it usually makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you just reminded me is I did have two customers that I'm aware of that did go to Toggle Deploy specifically because they had a customer where their data needed to be in a specific region, right? So that's a good point there, Coachman. Definitely. So let me see if we have any other questions here. Oh, nope, you're welcome, Alexander. Anytime. Okay, so as we wrap things up, just a couple of things I put in chat how you can request a demo, but also you can see on my screen share here, you can request a demo from here. And if you're an existing customer, please reach out to your CSM. Most likely it's myself. And let's just touch base. We have a lot of cool things that are coming out and things that have come out with Toggle. So make sure you sign up for the newsletter, follow us on social media, because there's a lot of really cool things happening. And uh, if as far as monitoring TagoDeploy, right? It may look a little daunting to some. It's like, oh, I have all these limits. I have. It's really only a couple things you need to wrap your head around. It's very simple to do. And the monitoring system that Cochran showed is an excellent, excellent resource that we've added recently, right? So don't be intimidated by TagoDeploy. It's really there to assist you and help you scale much faster in different areas, right? So a couple quick things before we wrap up. I already mentioned, request a demo, a couple resources I just want to show you. Obviously, we have our dashboard templates. We're working on the Academy. I believe that's released. So yes, we have the Learning Center, but we also have an Academy. I believe we're going to be replacing the Learning Center with updated material in the Academy. So that's coming as well. We have some new use cases out there that are pretty cool to read. So you could check those out. And as well, if you're interested in learning, or maybe you want to, before you book a demo, you can just come over here to products and click on any of our products. By the way, Tago Tips, pretty cool. You guys should check that out. I'm not going to go into it here. We did a webinar on it. Go check it out on YouTube. I'm sure we'll talk about it again in the future. But check out Tago Tip. That's fairly new too. Great resource. But you could just go here, TagoDeploy, and you can kind of get I wouldn't say a better overview than we gave because we're real live people, but here you can dig down a little bit and just learn a little more of what you could do, look at your cost calculator, so on and so forth. So check that out. Please schedule a demo and let me know if you guys need anything because I'm always here to help you guys. Whether you're a customer or not, I would love to talk to you and our team would love to talk to you. So with that, keep an eye out for our next webinar. I believe it's up on our website. If not, it should be shortly. But with that, it's always been great talking to you guys. Thank you, Coachrin, and we will see everybody on the next webinar. Bye bye, everybody. Thank you.